Welcome to the Blue Lotus Buddhist Meditation Center here in Venice, Florida. Today we will be talking about the ego. A lot of people are very confused about the ego. There's all kinds of recommendations about dealing with the ego, including killing the ego, transcending the ego, getting out of its grasp, not being so egotistical. You get it through spirituality, you get it through psychology, and you also get it through the common language. Like, that person's so egotistical, So what I want to do is describe the ego, but I want to describe the ego in such a way that it is helpful for your own spiritual growth so you can understand it. And please, if anything is unclear, ask a question immediately, because that's a cue to you that there's something that you need to clarify. And that cue is very important, and you have to pay attention to those cues because, part of understanding the teaching is to be able to inquire. Inquire to what is, inquire to what's real. So the more you develop that mind and spirit of inquiry, then the deeper you go. So the ego has been, people say, you got to kill the ego, you got to get rid of the ego. But a lot of people don't even know what the ego is. So it's like, what are you killing? We see the manifestations of it like somebody's very egotistical, and then we know what an ego is. But a lot of times we need to understand it a little better. And I think it helps to understand it for our own spiritual growth, because if we're clear about it, then we can know how to deal with it. One thing about the ego is that the ego, you could define it as this. It's the thoughts, feelings, sensations you have that relate to yourself, relate to who you are. So these thoughts and things are, Jung put it in a particular way. He said that we have a body and time and space. And so the ego is about positioning ourselves in time and space. So positioning ourselves in time and space means that we have to function. So the ego is made of thoughts and concepts. Thoughts and concepts are tools. They're the most common tool that we use. A lot of times we don't think of them as tools, but they actually are tools. They're mental tools. We can figure things out, we can do our taxes, we can do all kinds of things with these tools. So one of the tools is to create an ego. So when I was young, my mother would say to me, Jim, and then I learned that that was my name. Okay, so then I started developing an ego. I started developing some concepts about myself. And these concepts about myself grew. And then they grew and grew and grew. And then there was all kinds of concepts. Some of the concepts were unconscious. Maybe somebody abused me in some way and I had some fear that was associated with myself in situations, and that was also in there. So it's not only conscious things about yourself, it's unconscious things about yourself. But it always has to focus around yourself, because that's the ego. So as I said, Jung really called it a positioning in time and space. A positioning in time and space means that we have to know where we are in the world. So if Lou says, what's your name again? I can say, oh, Jim. Okay, it's a tool. What's a tool? I'm using the tool to give him my name so he recognizes me and he can, respond in that way. So this tool of thought is how we construct the ego. All kinds of thoughts about ourselves. Now the thing about a tool is that a tool can be used appropriately or it can be used inappropriately. So sometimes we have thoughts about ourselves that do not align with reality. When the thoughts about ourselves do not align with reality, we run into problems. In other words, our ego is not healthy. So if somebody says to me, Arson says to me, what's your name? And I go, George, and I think my name is George. I'm kind of out there, because my name isn't George, it's Jim. And sometimes people with mental illness have these huge breaks in their ego understanding. So we learn all these things about ourselves. and these are conceptual things. And one thing about conceptual things or thought things is that thought things have certain limitations. You know, you ever heard of duality and non-duality? Well, thought is dual. Thought is dualistic. So if I create an idea of myself as a good Jim, guess what's in the background? A bad Jim. It's almost there by inference. And so if Isa goes to me, Jim, you know, I think you really made a mistake, and all of a sudden I see myself as a bad Jim, guess what? I'm going to feel hurt. I'm going to feel angry. I'm going to feel defensive. All that stuff is going to come out because the good Jim that I'm holding on to, which is just a concept, has this other concept, good and bad, duality, black and white, duality, up and down, duality. Anything you put in concepts creates duality. So as soon as you define yourself in terms of a concept, what happens is you create a duality. And you create that duality, and then a strange thing happens. All kinds of problems arise. So if I think I'm a good Jim, and somebody criticizes me, then all of a sudden I have two things happen. One is I get very defensive, and then also I start questioning myself. I start saying, well, maybe I'm not so good as I think I am. Maybe I worry because as soon as I define myself as a concept, I put myself in that structure. So one of the things about concepts, it has a dualistic structure. Every concept has a dualistic structure. Another thing about concepts, which is somewhat dualistic, is that they're separative. So if I name you Isa and I'm Jim, guess what? I've just created a separation. I've created a separation because I've named things. As soon as you name things, what you've done is create a separation. So you name something, you know, my mom says, no, you're not your brother Art, you're Jim. So in a certain way it functions. It functions in practical for me to know that I'm different from my brother. But there's a problem with this. There's a residue. And the residue is that once I define myself as these concepts, what I've created is a sense of division, a sense of separation between me and the world. This sense of separation can feel huge. It can feel alienating. It can feel like you're not in contact, you're not one with everybody else. You can feel like, oh, nobody likes me, or, or just this distance between yourself and somebody else. Because concepts create that type of distance. They create that type of separation. They only do it if you take them too seriously, if you really believe in them. Any questions at this point? Any thoughts about what I'm saying? Get anybody triggered? Yeah, Isa.
This duality that then there is this bad side of self that one cannot stand to even imagine. Like, how does meditation, what does one do with that?
Once you've defined yourself in a certain way, and good and bad, or
right,
yes.
right.
Okay, so this is the thing. We create all these concepts about ourselves. We create this ego. And the thing is, the ego is made of thoughts. Thoughts are tools. You know what I mean? So these tools operate and they help us. So Joanne asked me what my name is. I can say Jim. That's a tool. It really worked. You know? But there's a problem with these tools. The problem is when we identify with a tool, you know, you are not a concept. You're not a limited concept. Thought and concepts are tools. Don't be a freaking tool. You know how they call people tools? Well, we do that to ourselves. We create ourselves as tools. Or we take the tool and we make a self out of it. So we identify with these concepts and we actually think that they are us. Not that we use them as tools to function in life as our positioning in time and space. Not that we're using them practically like that, because tools are meant to be used practically. If I use a hammer to pound in a nail, seems fine. I'm using it practically. If I'm talking to my hammer like it's my best friend, then I've gone off the wall. Do you see? Because I'm taking a tool and I'm making it into an entity. I'm making it into an entity, so I'm kind of not aligned with reality anymore. So our tools need to stay tools. And the tools that you talk to yourself about, you have to understand that they have this limitation. They have this limitation, the limitations of thoughts. So once you identify with one of these tools, Jim, okay, now once I've identified with that idea of Jim, not just practically, somebody asking my name, not that, but I really identify inside, then there's going to be a good and bad Jim, a capable and incapable Jim. There's going to be all kinds of dualistic Jims inside. That's just what happens with thought. There's also going to be a sense of separation. It's one thing if Ray asks me what my name is, and I say Jim, and he's Ray, and we use this separation practically. But if I believe that this separation has some kind of more power to it, more depth, that we're not connected on a deeper level, what happens is that Ray and Jim become such separate entities that they can't connect. They can't connect. That's because I'm identifying with thought. I'm identifying with the limitations of thought. Don't identify with your limitations. So does this make sense so far? Yeah. So this is the creation we have. We have a creation of this ego. And in psychology, they they notice these problems people have with their ego. And sometimes, parts of the ego are things like understanding your own personality. Like you all have interests, you all have personality traits. And, that's just, if they align with reality, then it's just a tool. Oh, I'm outgoing or I'm shy or whatever. You just know yourself. You know your tendencies. And that functions. But if you identify with it, it no longer functions. No, I couldn't possibly do that because I'm so shy. Okay, now I'm identifying with it. I'm just not noticing a trait. What I'm doing is I'm identifying with it. And once I identify with it, guess what? It totally limits me. I can't be outgoing. I can't be outgoing because I believe so much in this shyness. I've identified so much with that concept, with that part of the duality. And if you notice, all your suffering revolves around the sense of self, the sense of I. And this is the big thing that Buddha was trying to teach. We want to teach that there is no I, there is no me that's separate. What you are is just he was saying, just a bunch of parts. Thoughts, body, all these things. But if you add them up and try to make an entity out of them, that's when you suffer. So you notice the parts, and you give fair understanding and respect to those parts, but you don't pull them all together and create a sense of self that is rigid, that is just a concept. Because if you do that, what happens is that you create suffering for yourself. Does this make sense? So the thing is, if we're not these thoughts about ourselves, it's hard because we're taught that we are. Everybody is taught that we are these thoughts we have about ourselves. Your parents tell you all the time, I was Jim, and I was this, and I was that, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Sometimes they told me I was a bad Jim, and sometimes they told me I was a good Jim. But it was still in that dualistic framework of this idea of Jim that they were trying to pass down to me. And I think the idea of separation, some people feel tremendous distance between themselves and other people. They feel this distance because they've identified so much with their separate idea of themselves. They've identified so much that it's created a gap between themselves and other people. So it's a positioning in time and space. Any questions up till now? Any thoughts?
What about, oh, sorry, no, I was just gonna say, you're talking about parts. What about the saying about we are the sum of all our parts?
We are the sum of all our parts?
Yeah.
It's like,
Didn't somebody say that?
if you, no, it really depends what the sum is. If the sum is conceptual, then it's a limitation. If the sum is just like this open self, do you see what I'm saying? Then it's not conceptual. It's beyond the concept of self. So it depends how you define the sum. And this is, and even if you're trying to be less dualistic and less, more aware, So you stand back and you realize that all these thoughts about myself are just moving through my consciousness. They're coming and going. And so the first realization you be is, how can I be something that comes and goes? I'm here all the time. You know what I mean? So Jim, I'm thinking good thoughts about Jim. I'm thinking about Jim. Now I'm not thinking about Jim. Now I'm thinking a bad thought about Jim. Now I'm thinking, all these things change over time. And all these changes over time just indicates that thoughts of various kinds about myself are going through my consciousness, through my awareness. And guess what's not being touched by this? Awareness itself. Awareness is still there. And this is when we start questioning this, what happens is we start recognizing who we truly are. Who we truly are in Buddhism is what they call Buddha nature. Buddha nature is something that's beyond a simple concept. It's beyond an ego. It's beyond a self of a little less. This also has been defined, besides Buddha nature, as in Dzogchen, as a field of awareness. You are a field of awareness. In this field, your body arises, your sensations arise, your feelings arise, your thoughts go through and come and go. Your thoughts could be good Jim one day, bad Jim the next day, not thinking about Jim all day. Well, guess what? What happened to Jim when I haven't been thinking about him? The real Jim stays there. The real Jim is this, it's not really a Jim, it's just this awareness. This awareness is there and all these things are flowing through it. And so one of the things that some of these more advanced Buddhists do is they really recommend that you really give deep questioning to who you think you are. And that you really see that you are this awareness that is beyond specification. It's beyond thought. It is the field in which all these thoughts arise. That's who you are. It's the field in which all these sensations arise. It's the field in which you see your body, and then sometimes you don't see your body. And it's the field in which your dreams arise. When you may be a totally different ego, you maybe feel you're a cab driver in India. And you're dreaming you're a cab driver in India. Guess what? That cab driver in India is just a secondary ego that you're taking on for a short period of time. But guess what? It's still arising in that whole field of awareness. It's arising in that field of awareness. And the field of awareness is strange because I can say field of awareness, and these are words and concepts, but the field of awareness is beyond words and concepts. Because words and concepts appear in that field. They come in that field and then they disappear in that field. So the field of awareness has to be beyond concepts. Now some people make a halfway step towards understanding this. They'll say, oh, I am the watcher. I am the one who's aware. I am the seer. And they see this and they're trying not to identify with the ego, they're trying to identify with a greater point of consciousness. But the problem with the seer and the watcher is, guess what? They're concepts. So now somebody has created,
Still dualistic.
Still dualistic, yes. So now there's a watcher, or the one who's aware, and then there's the watched, and the things we're aware of. There's a dualism there.
Is that kind of like when I might say to myself, well, you shouldn't be doing this, or you this, or it's like I'm not, it's not I.
Uh-huh.
It's like this separate person, and that's a concept. Is that,
It's a concept, and the concepts are tools, you know. And the concepts can be used as long as you don't identify with them. What crazy person thinks that they're their hammer?
but why is it we talk, well, maybe I'm the only one that does this, I don't know.
I doubt it.
You know, saying you, or it's like not being, oh God, this is hard to explain. But you'll say, what are you doing that for? You know, like
You're saying this to yourself?
yes, yeah.
Yes. Okay. This is the aspect of duality. Freud talked about this. He said there was a superego. The superego is a part of ourselves that criticizes the ego. Oh God, I'm not doing it right. Da, 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 da. So the superego comes up. So the superego is a part of that dualistic structure of believing we're a separate individual.
So is that superego different than the ego?
It's just a different aspect of it. The superego is like, feels like it's above the ego and criticizing the ego. That's why they call it a superego. But it's still just thought. It's still thoughts, and it's still thoughts about the self.
That's kind of weird, isn't it, that we have that?
It is weird. But you know, people are pretty weird. You know, the thing is, we're born into a world where we're conditioned to suffer. We're conditioned to suffer because we're taught we're a separate ego. We're taught that we're these thoughts we have about ourselves. And people sense, like you guys sense, there's something wrong with that. You're seeking. You become seekers. You're looking for something deeper. You're looking for a deeper explanation to life because you realize that the explanations that most people accept in our culture do not work. They work a little bit, but they don't work on the deepest level. What is the deepest level? For you to feel free and for you to have joy. You know, that's the deepest level.
So, which I was just saying, it feels like that super ego in a way is an internalization though of critiques and voices
Yes,
from
yes,
the past.
yes.
Like
That's where the super
parents, like, you know,
Yeah,
just
exactly.
saying, and if you do this, then you are unlovable.
Yes.
You will not get the material things you need or something. It's a way of kind of controlling our behavior. So in
Yeah.
a way, like if we are part of this greater consciousness, then really everything is sort of okay. We can then start to see these tools as perhaps not helping us.
No,
Not,
they're
you
not.
know,
And the tools you're talking about these criticisms of your family that you turn into a superego, they're not helpful tools at all. They're actually the misuse of this tool about the self and, you know, whatever, because they're just conditioned into you. You just tend to do it automatically. You tend to criticize yourself automatically because your parents criticize you.
It's like believing the roles you play. If I'm a social worker, I'm a mother, I'm a wife, I'm that.
Exactly.
That's-
Exactly.
Those are concepts, and years ago that never occurred to me.
Yes. And see, the roles you play is a good explanation for it because it's almost like an actor. If the actor identifies with their part too much, they might go a little crazy. I mean, so a good actor gives the part his all or her all, and at the same time, they recognize who they really are. They're the actor. They're the acting, you know, the one who is acting this part. They're not the part. You know, and so this is the thing is we're playing a part in life. We're playing a role, and this role we're conditioned to identify with. As soon as we identify with that role, we feel two aspects of duality. One is duality itself, good, bad, and the other is separation and distance between ourselves and other people. And these things are not happy things. They create suffering. And that's why the Buddha was so interested in this whole thing about our concept of self, because he thought it was the critical component to our suffering. It was the reason that we suffer the most. And if you look at your suffering, you'll find that it usually revolves around me. Oh God, what did I do now? I can't stand this person. I can't stand this situation. So it's almost like you've taken a stance with this limited I. And this is where suffering comes from. So this is why it's so important to be able to inquire into this I and to see its limitations and to see how it's used. In regular psychology, they talk about, people who have good ego strength. People who have good ego strength means that their ego lines up with reality. They know their skills. They don't think that they're more skilled than they are. If they think they're more skilled than they are, then they become narcissistic. If they think that they're less skilled than they are, then they become unsure of themselves. So in psychology, a healthy ego is when your thoughts about yourself align with reality. So that's true. When our thoughts about ourselves align with reality, we're much healthier. The problem is that...
Excuse me.
No, go ahead.
Who defines the reality? Where do we know the reality?
Reality is just our personal experience, our direct experience. So right now, you are looking at me. So you can say to yourself, I'm looking at Jim. And there's no conflict there. Do you see what I'm saying? Because what you're saying to yourself is matching reality. But if you say, right now I'm looking at Ray, it doesn't match with reality. And it doesn't align with reality. Yeah.
If you don't have any conflict about it, then you know it.
Well, it's more than just conflict. It's your direct experience does not contradict what you're believing. Because what you believe has to be always match your direct experience. If it doesn't match your direct experience, it can be fantasy. I can think I'm a king. Nobody's contradicting me. Guess what? It's a fantasy. Unless I see some things like, I'm in a kingdom and people are, responding to me that way.
The belief thing, people believe things that certainly aren't reality.
Exactly. Yes, people believe all kinds of things. You can see in politics these days, people believe all kinds of propaganda that isn't, some of us, there's no way to check it. And if you check it, you realize it's 90% BS, So that's where they can use it a lot. But we have to be careful about using it on ourselves. So in psychology, if you have an ego that aligns with the reality, you're considered to have a healthy ego. If you have an ego that doesn't rely with reality and you think you're better than you can do things better than you actually do, then you're considered narcissistic. Are you going to say something?
Yeah, I'm just thinking what you're saying. If you are in alignment with reality from the psychology point of view, it means that your identifications are accurate. And so anytime you're identifying, you're really not quite totally in sync with the reality that you're describing.
So the thing is, identification is a challenging word there, because you can identify, like I can identify simply and practically as Jim, and then I can identify psychologically as Jim. That means I'm grasping onto my idea of Jim and I'm holding onto it tightly. That's a type of identification. And that type of identification creates problems. It creates suffering for us. So even terminology, you have to kind of see where it moves from practicality to psychological turmoil. So the thing is, we use concepts all day long. And the thing is about concepts is that they have to align with reality. If they don't align with reality, if we're doing a job, the job's not going to turn out right. If we're doing our life, our lives are not going to turn out right. If it's about ourselves, we're going to suffer. So, and what does it mean when align with reality? Align with reality means our direct experience. We've checked it out in our direct experience, and we know that that's true. If we don't know it's true, then, So the thing is, this idea of you being a field of awareness, you have to check that out in your experience. Otherwise, it's just a concept. Just a concept. Am I a field of awareness? What is a field of awareness? It's one way of talking about it, but it's not just some little concept. I'm a watcher, I'm this or I'm that, you know. So we contemplate it. We have to contemplate it because when you talk about your true nature is beyond concepts. Because it's beyond concepts, you can't pin it down. You can only experience it directly. Right now, you never are away from your Buddha nature. You're in your Buddha nature right now. The problem is, it's like meditating. When we meditate, we get so lost in thought that we forget about our Buddha nature. We're lost in all these concepts about ourselves. And all of a sudden we realize we're lost in all these concepts about ourselves or life or whatever. And then all of a sudden we start focusing on our breath and body sensations and things like that. All of a sudden we've left the fantasy world of thought and we've entered the actual world of direct experience. And if you enter the actual world of direct experience, you can start experiencing your true nature. A lot of people experience their true nature in meditation. They just feel that deep peace and openness and spaciousness and loving kindness and wisdom, because you can have, you know, insights in this you know, meditative state. And they don't realize it's their true nature. They think that their true nature is limited Jim having an experience of expansion by meditating, rather than the other way around. The expansive Jim, this awareness, all of a sudden relaxing into itself, and then at the end going back to believing in this little Jim and believing it's this little Jim, this little concept of Jim. So when you're meditating, what you're doing is you're training yourself. You're training your mind. Every time you get lost in thought, you recognize you're getting lost in thought, and you turn your attention to direct experience. Your breath, your body sensations, your butt on the chair, your feet on the floor, whatever it may be. So every single time you do that, you're training yourself. That's why meditation is so functional. It gets you in tune with your true nature. And sometimes people do that temporarily because they don't realize they're doing it. They're just meditating and then all of a sudden they feel good and, oh, that was a nice meditation. But their concept of self hasn't changed. Their concept of self hasn't been looked into. It hasn't been challenged. You don't have to do anything to be your true nature. You just have to stop identifying with the thoughts about yourself.
You can't do anything.
You can do anything because there's really nobody there to do it. As soon as you say I, there's a thought. Well, you don't have to do anything. You just be aware of awareness. Right now you're aware. And you know what? There's not a damn thing you can do about it. You can think negative thoughts, you're aware of those. You can think of positive thoughts, you're aware of those. You can be dreaming. Guess what? The dream is occurring in awareness. Even deep sleep occurs in awareness. The mind's quiet, but if you ask me and you said, Jim, did you sleep well? Yeah, it was a very peaceful sleep. Well, why was it a peaceful sleep? Because awareness was there and the mind wasn't operating. I wasn't having any dreams or I wasn't awake or anything else. I was just feeling the peace of my true nature. So it's so strange that we have this true nature and we overlook it over and over and over and over again. And that's how come we have to go to these damn talks. Because, no, seriously, I listen to this stuff till it comes out of my ears, and guess what? I have to train my mind to see this clearly. I have to train my mind to see this clearly so I don't fall for the BS. The BS is my ego taking over. Me believing in the limitation. It's not that I believe in the opposite, that I'm somehow unlimited and great. I don't believe in the opposite. I just don't get involved with the concept. When I don't get involved with the concept, what happens? I recognize my true nature as awareness. I recognize it as, sometimes the Buddhists just call it emptiness. Why is it empty? Well, there's no thoughts happening. There's no distortions about yourself. It's just empty and open. And people say it's open and spacious. I tend to like open and spacious better than empty. Because empty has a little connotation conceptually. So we hear about this stuff and we see it, and then we have to see it again and again and again. And when you see it again and again and again, what happens at some point, you awaken. And what does awakening mean? It doesn't mean perfection. It just means all of a sudden you have seen so deeply through this ego, through this concept of self, you realize, I can't be that. Why can't I be that? I'm looking at Jim, my idea of Jim. How can I be that idea of Jim? Well, two things. That idea of Jim comes and goes. How can I be that if it comes and goes? How can I be that idea of Jim if I am the subjective awareness that's watching that? If I'm here with this pure subjectivity, looking at this object in my mind called Jim, how could I possibly be Jim when I'm this pure subjectivity being aware of this? So I start looking at these things and I start examining them. And by examining them, what happens is that I begin to realize I can't be something that comes and goes. I'm always here. Awareness is always here. I can't be something that's just an object in my mind that comes and goes. I can't be something just conceptual, because it's an object that comes and goes, and it's positive one day and negative the next day. I begin to start seeing the limitations, and I start seeing these limitations directly in my experience, because what I'm doing is I'm examining, and I'm going into this question, who am I? Who am I? Not I am something. As soon as you say something, you're putting it in a concept. I am. So then there's these things that point to your true nature. One is global awareness. Another is being, just I am. Another is spaciousness, emptiness. There's also expressions of it, like love and wisdom. Like if you're in your true nature and you're calm, your mind's open, you're not thinking anything, you're not predisposed to any particular actions, and then all of a sudden you see something and you see its nature. Oh yeah, I should do that. Or no, I wouldn't want to do that because of that. It's just all of a sudden you're open to this deepest intuition, which is a wisdom. And you're open to that because all this conditioning is out of the way. All the conditioning is either thoughts we're thinking now or thoughts from the past. Beliefs from the past. Anybody ever have that? Where you're just like all of a sudden just get calm and your mind calms down and then all of a sudden you can just see something very clearly and you kind of know whether you should do it or not. I think all of you should, because it's almost like, you can't help but have experiences like that and also not and be on the path. The path is one of those experiences.
So in order to do this, we learn about grasping and about letting go and about detachment.
Yes.
We learn about those things in order to overcome this self that's not in reality.
Yes. Because the self has particular actions. This negative self that is limited has particular actions. The Buddhists described it as one is basically delusional. It doesn't really exist the way you think it exists. So the basic category is delusion. But there's three poisons. The other poison is attachment. When you have a limited concept of yourself, guess what? When you have a limited concept of yourself, you don't feel full. You don't feel complete. So there's something that's going to complete you. If I just get this amount of money, if I just get this woman or man, if I just get this furniture for my house, if I just get this attachment. So attachment grows because you feel deep inside like you're incomplete. The other thing that grows is aversion. Well, I'll be all right if I get this out of my life. This just starts happening. If that neighbor could shut up for a minute, then I can have some peace and I'll be happy. And almost like imagine yourself happy for the rest of your life, like something's going to do it for you. And this is one of the things in my life I realized, a while ago, that nothing's going to do it for me. There's not a damn thing that's going to do it for me. Not something I get rid of, not something I get. The only thing that's going to do it for me is seeing reality the way it is. Seeing reality, seeing through this illusion of a conceptual self, and being free in that way. That will do it for me. But even if you do that, even if you move to this place where you really see that you are awareness, guess what? You still have habit patterns from the past where all of a sudden you're going to find yourself in ego again. But instead of being in ego almost all the time and every once in a while having a spiritual experience, now you're having a spiritual experience all the time and every once in a while find yourself in ego. Much better. So we examine this self. We examine as, who am I? Who am I really? What is this concept of self? How does this concept limit me? And you start examining these things, and as you examine them, just listening to this talk today, what you're doing, if you're listening and you're contemplating it, is you're breaking down. You're breaking down your misconceptions. It's not like you have to gain some huge wisdom. It's almost like you have to break down the misconceptions because you're already there. You are already this global awareness. That's who you are. That's your true nature. You can't do a damn thing about it. That's who you are. The only thing you can do is go away from it by getting attached to things, being aversive, or being deluded, which is thinking that you're just some concept. That's the major delusion. Other thoughts? Other comments? So if you have anything that, just even an inkling of an idea that isn't clear, please bring it up because these things are very important. Those inklings are telling you something you need to massage. It's like, just something you need to touch. It's like an itch. If you scratch it, it'll feel better.
Sometime I'd like to hear you talk about universal energy.
Universal energy?
Yeah, sometime.
Sometime. Can you explain that a little more about universal energy?
Well, I have this concept that my true nature is within this universal energy.
Okay. So that could be true.
So I'm not, I don't know if this concept has any scientific basis maybe, or?
Well, the thing about universal energy is that you have to understand when you talk about universal something, it's already going beyond concepts. You know what I mean? So it's almost like, how do you prove something that's universal? We could typically prove the exception to a fact. Well, the only thing we can do to prove ourselves about anything that's universal is through direct experience.
I guess I'm thinking more about what the scientific world and how some of that is correlating with.
Yes, it is.
with
And a lot of physicists and people who are really looking at this stuff deeply, the nature of things, they're coming to the same conclusions that the Buddhists are coming to.
Yeah.
Some people in the scientific professions are saying now that life is just a projection of our minds. It's just a projection of our awareness. And that's what they're saying. How did they get there? Through science. But a lot of people get there. Jung, he was a very spiritual person. And he said that ego is just our, predispositions or whatever in space and time, our positioning in space and time. So he had some deep, deep understanding of life. And there's a lot of people who have deep, deep understandings of life, and some of them are very simple. They won't give you any concepts. They just say, well, I'm at peace. That's about as much as they can say about it. Other people are scientists, and they can talk about it in all kinds of different ways. Or Jung, he can talk about it in all kinds of psychological ways. Or spiritual teachers in Buddhism and Advaita Vedanta, they can talk about it in various ways and point to the direction of becoming aware of this field of awareness. This field of awareness. You're nothing but a field of awareness.
Did, Buddhism as a philosophy, was that ever, yes, never mind. I worked that through just now.
Oh,
so
okay,
never
okay,
mind.
good. Excellent job.
At least it satisfied me for now.
But the Buddha was interesting because he said his purpose was, was not to start a religion. He said that his purpose was to help people not suffer. That's all he was after. He didn't want to be a god. He didn't talk about gods. He didn't talk about anything else. He just talked about the things that tend to make people suffer. So he came up with the 3 poisons. The 3 poisons are delusion, attachment, and aversion. He said that these create suffering for people. What's the central delusion? The central delusion is a mistaken sense of self. As long as you have a mistaken sense of self, you're involved in the deepest delusion. Painful. Attachment and aversion, we all deal with that to some degree. Aversion is almost like we say, well, this too shall pass. Or, I'm not going to put all my eggs in that one basket. I mean, we have ways of dealing with it because on some level, people have understood that getting so involved in something is going to do it for me, or if this just goes, then I'm going to be fine, or how come this won't leave? People have understood this stuff on some level. But we're talking about understanding on the deepest level possible, on such a deep level that even at some point, after you've awakened, these tendencies will not even come up in you anymore. In other words, these tendencies to make yourself miserable will not even arise. And you can see it. We've all seen people, say that they, come to someone, they look pretty happy, at least at peace. And I think all of you can probably say that because you've been involved in meditation and you've been involved in looking at this stuff, that your mind is more at peace than it used to be. So you are living examples of this because you've done some work. You've meditated, you've explored things, you've looked into things, you come to these talks and you inquire into yourself and your true nature, and you're willing to do that. And because you're willing to do that, guess what breaks down? The delusion, the attachment, and the aversion. That starts breaking down. Any other thoughts?
Gratitude that you're here to do that for us.
Well, I'm grateful that everybody's done it for me, because I read about this stuff, and I like this site a lot. It's called Non-Duality, the Truth of Our Being. This woman, Emily Snow, gets the best quotes from all these people all over the world for, all different traditions, all about non-duality, the truth of our being. Just reading that post can be very helpful. It's very deep. It's very profound.
Emily Snow.
Emily Snow, the truth of non-duality, the truth of our being. I recommend it highly. So, folks, anything else before we end?
Thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
And, the thing is that it's really fun to be with people who are interested in the same freedom. And I thank you for being here. It would be kind of a lonely world, or just kind of a strange world if I went around and I started thinking, God, all this stuff seems to be true and nobody's interested. So thank you.